Polypaint. Polypaint is the ability to add texture to an object without information of UVs. So just know that the information is here in Zbrush and it can't transfer out until you transfer it to UVs. Alright. So let's take this for example. Here's a default cube. Perspective off. And I like to adjust my material before I start. First thing I'd like to do is go up here to the white. Then choose a material by clicking here. I go to the basic material. And then I also go in here to material and turn off like all the specularity, all the reflectivity, raise diffuse up. But see how dark the shadow is right here? I like to kill that too. I like to go in here to the material and turn up the ambient of it. And there we go. Now I got a really flat looking shadow. Then I'll go over to polypaint, which is located over here, and hit colorize. Now whatever color I had at the moment I hit colorize is the color of the cube. So that's why I chose white. Now if I just take Z add off with RGB on in the standard brush, I can start drawing on the mesh with black. But you can see that the detail isn't very good. I can't draw a really nice line. It has this faceted information. So when I go to geometry and divide it, I get more vertices. And really this is just, polypaint is just a variation of vertex paint. Okay, so vertice paint is about the same thing, almost 100%. And that has been around for quite some time. Now you can see I get a nice variance both in the stroke and the opacity. Now I'm using a Wacom drawing tablet to make that variance happen. Lightly pressing equals opacity drop, harsh like that, bolder lines. An Intos 5 small is a great little tablet for ZBrush. There's no doubt about it. I wouldn't go bigger. I would stick with the Intos 5. It's a very nice tablet. Intos 4 works quite well too. The only thing bad with 5 is the touch. So touch on equals fail. So make sure you turn touch off. If you get that tablet, just look at how to do that. Now each brush has its own kind of variance too. So right now I can affect opacity and I can affect the width of the stroke. But not all brushes can do that. Let's go to clay for example and take Z add off. Now I can make really fine lines or really thick lines with no opacity drop. So just when you think you learned the ZBrush, keep in mind that every brush here has its own variance of both color and Z add. And some of the brushes don't have any. Let's say like I went to pinch for example. Pinch with Z add off equals nothing. Same with flatten. See? But if you go to like some things like S-polish, very nice stroke, and it feels it has a nice balance between both opacity and line drop. If you hold shift, you can take and smooth out. So hold shift and take Z add off. You can blur your stroke. Now it's really hard to blur a stroke when it's up to this level of subdivide, but watch what happens. Let's say I want to fill in this area with a nice gradient. Let's back it down to 4. Hold shift. let's say 7. Look at that. How nice is that blur? And then when you go up to 9, it'll keep that level of detail there. So if you ever need to blur something, back it down a few levels. Alright, just a few other things that I find interesting. Let's switch sides, and that's why I like using a cube so much. I can test out some things. Oftentimes students go right into the idea of making a goblin, but really it's all about learning the tools first. Okay, here's an interesting one. If you go to layer and go to layer pattern, take RGB on, Z add off. This is a nice brush for filling in texture in an area. That's kind of like mowing your lawn. If you make strokes that are like this, you can fill in a very large area with a very nicely spatialed texture. Okay, let's go over here. So that means any alpha can be affected too. If you go into standard brush and then you have something like drag rec, you can go to an alpha of like this and you can drag those out. If you have a texture, let's say of these jelly beans, and then you have alpha off, you can start putting jelly beans in the area. You notice the jelly beans are a little darker now. Look how bright they are here, but they're kind of dark here. Well, as I said, the information from the material is causing that to happen. If you go to flat shade, you can see that the jelly beans are just as bright as they were over here. And this is the information and how it's going to look on your UVs. Alright, last but not least, let's talk about UVs. So let's go over here, back this all the way down, go to a plugin called UV Master and Unwrap. To view these UVs, you go over here to UV map and you can hit Morph UV. If you take off symmetry and unwrap, you might get a different kind of look for the map. Alright, now in order to transfer the information from polypaint to UVs, you have to go all the way up to levels, get as much as the highest level of detail that you can get, and then you can go down here below to UV map and choose 2048. This is going to be the texture it will create. Then go to texture map and go to the create button. Now with 2048, I can go like this, new from polypaint. There is my map. And now such information, if I go all the way down in levels, stays on the cube and can be transferred over to applications like Maya. Don't forget to hit 6 on the keyboard. There we go. Now if I didn't like the UVs, because maybe I couldn't make good UVs in ZBrush, I could go over here to automatic mapping, which I hate automatic mapping, but it does change. And let's go to Window, UV Texture Editor. Let's go over here to the image and display image off. Here's a different set or type of UV. And again, you can use just about any, you can use any mapping whatsoever here. This is just an example. Now if I go back, if it lets me, there we go. Let's go to object mode and then go back using the Go Z feature. The UV information has changed. So that means now I can use the ZBrush or the Maya UVs in ZBrush. I can just simply go to my highest level again. Go down here below. Go to Texture Map and say New from Polypaint. There I have the new UVs that I made back in Maya. Alright, so that just gives you the general understanding of polypaint. There's tons more, but you should probably just play around with those concepts first before you go on.